Hi, everyone. We're going to give us just a moment here before we get started. My name is Callie. I'm the Director of Marketing for Promises. I'm really, really glad you all found us. I'm on with Jake today. We're going to get started here in just a moment. If it's your first time joining us, I'd love to see in the chat if you just want to let us know where you're joining from. I'm personally in Oregon. Jake is in Pennsylvania. I It's 3 o'clock my time. It's like middle of the day. This is lovely.
Mm.
It's a great break. And just so everyone knows, Jake's going to share his screen and then we're going to hit record. So this will be viewable on YouTube. So if you miss or have to leave part of the way through, if you have this to share with someone after the fact, you'll be receiving the recording and they also all live on YouTube. If you've missed one up to this point, and you want to go back and watch previous family webinars, they are all living there. Ooh, a few Florida people. I'm originally from Houston, Margaret. Nice to
Mm.
see ya. New York, Tennessee, lovely. Okay, Jake, can you share your screen again for me?
Yes.
Oh, Idaho, you're not far from me. Perfect.
All right.
That looks great. I'm gonna hit record. Okay, welcome everybody to another Promises Family Webinar evening. This webinar is going to be around what's called our window of tolerance, and Jake is going to get into that more here in a moment. Just so you know, your camera is turned off, your microphone is muted. You might be able to see there's a place for you to raise your hand if at any point you have questions. You're welcome to raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you could ask a question, or that chat is fully available the whole time. So Jake and I will both be keeping an eye on that and we'll answer your questions there in the chat. We really encourage you to, give your input, give your opinion, give a question. Like with this time is for you all as families of someone that either is in active addiction, considering treatment, in recovery. This is a time for you to help better that relationship with your loved one, and the best way to do that is to ask those questions. So, Jake, you can go to the next slide. I'm going to introduce
Mm.
you.
Yes.
So I'd like to introduce Jake. Oh, I did not ask how to say your last name. I'm going to say Moliere.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well done, Callie.
Thank you.
Well done.
Who is a licensed therapist in Pennsylvania, and he's our lead therapist for the Ranch Pennsylvania's outpatient program. Jake finds a lot of meaning in building relationships within the therapeutic space, so he's passionate about offering practical tools that help navigate someone's, life challenges, and his clinical approach draws primarily from DBT and ACT with psychodynamic principles woven throughout his work. On a more personal note, I find it very important that Jake talks about his commitment to diet soda before the
Please.
time that he spends with his wife and daughter. I very much appreciate
That's right.
that.
Priorities.
I'm more of a Coke Zero girl myself, but
Mm.
there we are. Okay, you can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about promises. So, within promises, I would typically spend this time, maybe talking to you all about like where we are located, but you can see that on your screen. So, I'm going to shift gears a bit today and just talk to you about the treatment within our programs. And, we're not just here to help regulate and stabilize your loved one that's in treatment. We're really trying to equip people with tools so that they can build a more sustainable, meaningful life and recovery. Jake here to talk about the window of tolerance is exactly that. But to just kind of back up a little bit to know what someone might expect when entering treatment, we often see that it's not a lack of desire. Someone that's in treatment is there to get better. They just may not have the tools to do that. So we give them tools to regulate their emotions, navigate relationships, tolerate discomfort, and reconnect with themselves and that sense of purpose. So our programming is intentionally designed around helping clients develop those core capabilities. And so we focus heavily on emotional regulation, distress tolerance. Many of our clients come in without reliable ways to manage overwhelming feelings. And I'm sure as a family member, or you've seen that within your loved one when anxiety, shame, grief, or anger creep in, but through modalities like DBT and mindfulness, and experiential therapies when appropriate. We help clients learn how to sit with those emotions without needing to escape them. And second, we like to help clients build those relationship tools. Healing does not happen in isolation. It's important that you all are here today. Like it happens in that connection. So we work on communication skills, boundary setting, rebuilding trust. Again, not just with each other, but within themselves. And whether that's through group therapy, family involvement, community-based experiences, we help clients begin to understand how to show up differently within relationships. And lastly, I'll just talk about that we emphasize a lot of self-awareness and insight. So through therapy, individual therapy and evidence-based modalities, clients start to understand the real why behind their behaviors, what's driving them, what patterns they've been stuck in, and how to interrupt those cycles in a way that's going to help them moving forward. And that last piece is really just helping clients establish the daily structure and life skills that they need. So recovery isn't just about what happens within a therapy session, within a time where they feel regulated. It's about understanding how in a regular day-to-day life, it's important to continue to build routines, practice accountability, and develop those healthy habits to support long-term recovery. We really believe on creating purpose and whole person healing, which is, I think, makes this especially in a powerful place like these family webinars. The tools that you get to learn as well are alongside what someone in recovery is learning. So clients and you don't just get to learn, you get to actually embody like what you're going to experience and live and use outside of this webinar, outside of treatment. Really, at the end of the day, our goal at Promises at all of these facilities is very simple, and that's just when someone leaves Promises, they don't just feel better, they're better equipped, and they have a toolkit that they can rely on, especially when life gets hard. So, all of these facilities that you see, you might have someone here today that's at the ranch in Pennsylvania, where Jake is, or at the Right Step Houston. Just know that while they may all like feel a bit different on the inside, all that clinical care, that curriculum I talked about is the same across the board. So we're really passionate about making sure that folks leave and have the most successful chance at a long-term healthy life. So, Jake, you can go on to the next slide. If you're here, maybe you perhaps or don't have a loved one at Promises today. If you have any questions around our programming or want to get introduced to some of our clinical team, maybe see a tour of a facility, family services at promises.com is that email address at the bottom. You can email that email address anytime and you'll get linked up with me and our clinical team. Okay, so next week, we do have a family support group that follows our webinars. So our monthly family support group is a free open space. Unlike this, there won't be a webinar or like a training involved. It's truly just an open space for you to come with your questions. That can be around admissions, that could be around aftercare, anything that you want to ask. We will have Bill Anderson, who's over our executive director at Promises Atlanta, and he just is basically there to answer your questions. So it's a really great space if you maybe something crops up this week after this webinar, or you want to come back to something you hear today, you can come back and ask those questions next week. And there's the date and time. I can put the registration link in the chat right after this. You can go to the next slide. I'm really excited to talk about this. We are expanding. We're growing our webinars. So instead of having just one webinar a month, we're going to start having two. So we'll continue to have the sequencing that it is the webinar, the follow-up family support, and then another webinar. And then we'll have 1 week off in between just for my own sanity. So the two educational webinars will be different webinars, different topics, different speakers, but it will be at the same time. So that will be the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, and then that third Tuesday of the month is when that support group is. So this just gives you a little bit of insight on that. If you are a part of this webinar today, you will receive a follow-up email to register for our future webinars. So I'm really excited starting this month on the 23rd. I think you can go to the next slide. I should have it listed. Yeah, on the 23rd, Stephanie will be here. And this is a really cool opportunity to hear from someone that's been through treatment, has been in recovery for a while. She's one of our alumni advisors at Washburn House in Massachusetts. You may recognize her. She did a family webinar a few months ago, but Stephanie will be kind of sharing her story, and not just that, but like what she really appreciated that her family did for her, and maybe some areas where it could have been better. So that could be a really good opportunity as well. You can go to the next slide. And then, oh, this is next month. So this is July. We're kicking off that first webinar of the month will be about aftercare and ongoing support. And that will be from Catalina Clark, who's our advisor at Ranch, Tennessee. So again, I'll drop some of these registration links into the chat. And if you want to register for them now, that's great. Otherwise, you'll see it in our course list within the Family Webinar like portal. So you can register for all of these then. You can go to the next slide. I might be done. I'm done. Awesome.
Boom.
Okay, Jake, I'm passing this to you. Again,
Yeah.
thank you all for
Thanks.
being here. If you have any questions, I'm in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So, um, thanks everybody for being here. I definitely am grateful to be talking with you and as Callie said, please utilize the chat as able. That would be huge to be able to make this as conversational as possible and interactive. And we're going to be talking about a number of just very practical things. So really, any kind of questions you have, as practical as they may be, or as theoretical as they may be, feel free to throw in the chat. Got to start with priorities. Highly recommend maybe grabbing a snack or a maybe a beverage of your choice. I know for me, and I appreciate Callie kind of bringing this up. I got my Barks zero sugar root beer. I've just been all about those lately. They've been hitting the spot, and honestly, they've been helping me stay in my window of tolerance, which coincidentally is what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're able to grab, yeah, snack, beverage, whatever you'd like, that would be awesome. I'm not planning on talking more than like 30 or 35 minutes, so I think I can stick to that. Um, so I just want to make this, yeah, again, very practical for you. So, but yeah, again, in all seriousness, I am super pumped to be here and excited just to share about the window of tolerance, which is a subject that I'm really passionate about. So I want to tell you a little bit about that actually, just to start, before I even get into my slideshow. I want to tell you why I'm passionate about the window of tolerance and why I chose this subject for today's little talk here. Um, I think the window of tolerance is very helpful and it explains a lot for people emotionally. And it gives them a visual that is extremely helpful in navigating life's life's complexities. Um, Specifically, as a therapist, I've found when I introduce the window of tolerance, this often leads to the most, at least so far in my career, the most aha moments for clients. Right? It's like, oh, like I even hear that sometimes, like, oh, like that. Wow, that explains it really, really well. I can think of a few couples I've worked with, and then obviously individuals, and especially in groups when we go through this, it's like, yeah, that hits at something that I didn't really have words for before, or this helps me order because this kind of has something for everybody, I would say, the window of tolerance. It might not hit you. I'll say that might not hit you in the first few minutes. You're like, yeah, I get it, like hyperarousal, like whatever. But then you might see, like, man, these emotion regulation skills I don't have down. Like, and that makes sense why I keep getting dysregulated. So again, it just gives language and um just a very helpful image for a lot of things. So that's why I chose that for today. So we will get into it. Let's see if I can use my button. Perfect. So just want to start with session goals. So this is really the objectives of what we're going after today. The first one is we want to learn to use the window of tolerance as a map to understand our emotional states. So again, this might not make a ton of sense to you right now, but these are the things that I will be going through, and I think it'll make more sense as time goes on. Two, we're going to learn specific distress tolerance skills for our various dysregulated states that we might get into. A lot of therapy jargon here, but we'll be breaking it down. The third session goal is we're going to try to work towards committing towards some um, daily emotion regulation skills, right? Right, to build our window of tolerance. That's really the third and really, really huge piece of this presentation. And lastly, um, this is the relational lens, is apply the window of tolerance to better navigate relational challenges. So I know this is a pretty eclectic group. I think we've got some people who are probably in treatment themselves or have been alumni or been in treatment in the past and are getting a refresher. We probably have people who have family members maybe in treatment, maybe some professionals, whatever it might be. I'm grateful you're here, really respect that. And I think this is applicable to all of those things, whether you're trying to help a loved one in their struggles or you're trying to grow this in these things yourself or a little bit of both. I think this is going to fit really well. So those are our 4 session goals. So I'm going to start with a question here, and I would love to utilize chat a little bit. Maybe get things going. Maybe even some emojis, some reactions, perhaps. Maybe down the road, if something hits you, feel free to throw an emoji out there. I'd love that. Um, the question is this. Feel free to throw it. And I love it. Thank you for that thumbs up, whoever did that. What's one situation that you can think of where you become a totally different version of yourself? Uh, it could be a specific place, person, topic that comes up at work. Yeah, Andrea, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Susanna, that's excellent. Really deep. Yeah, when there's like an emotional buildup. Sure. You notice that you kind of shift. Um, in your operation and how you are. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else can think of some stuff. These are a couple great ones. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, for sure, Jody. Yeah, yeah. My parents' house for sure. I get it. Absolutely. Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I do appreciate that one, Jody, too. I see yours. I'm just processing it here. Yeah, certain topics for sure. Right, like it can hit at something, right? Whatever, maybe a clash of values or you find something to be upsetting. Yeah, yeah. Derek, yup, yup. When you're in a stressful situation for too long. Yeah, totally, totally. Some of these different things. These are great answers, and I think I'm seeing definitely a lot of insight already. And the reason I asked this question, and I hope for those of us that didn't put an answer in the chat, I hope we're at least thinking through like what areas in my life um, am I seeing that I'm maybe changing a little bit in ways that I don't like, right? I become a different version of myself that I'm not proud of. Maybe I act in ways that are out of alignment with my values. Or, I get home and I'm like, man, I shouldn't have said that, right? And there are these different situations that we have to grow. Our skills of recognition in, right? And this is why, if you've been a client here or if you have a loved one in treatment at the promises, recognize, regulate, and respond is really like a common theme with how we teach DBT is getting better at recognizing um, where I'm struggling, where I'm getting triggered, and maybe why that is and what I can do about it. Yeah, tired and hungry is a great one. Appreciate yes, and that was exactly where I brought up the zero sugar drinks here. Come on. Yeah, that's right, Derek. Self-awareness. When I'm feeling insecure and become very defensive, that's a great one as well. Yep, yep. Just getting better at recognizing these situations where I'm not at my best. So we're gonna keep going here. Yeah, but keep them coming in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that as well. This is really, really good, really, really helpful. This next piece here, I have a beautiful picture of a map, as you can see. And this is actually a map of the area that I grew up in uh, what many would consider to be the eighth wonder of the world, South Jersey. It's just incredible there. If you've never been to South Jersey, South New Jersey, I can't recommend it enough. 5 out of 5 stars. I love it there. But not just to flaunt my love for my hometown, I want to talk about maps for a second because I think this is a really helpful visual. Is the window of tolerance is a map. That's kind of the first thing I want to highlight here is when you think of the window of tolerance, I want you to start thinking this is a map. So for all those situations that you guys mentioned in the chat, that's excellent. The window of tolerance, the goal of it is for to provide a map for helping you navigate that. when I'm at work and I'm feeling this way, or when someone brings up this topic, I need language to help me say, okay, this is what's going on right now, and this is what I need. And that's what a map does, because a map tells you where you are. I grew up right around Riga Avenue, off of Riga Avenue, West Jersey. So boom, there I am. I need to get to the airport, so I need to go in this direction. And I need to take this road to get there. That's what the window of tolerance is doing. It's saying, this is where I am. This is what's happening in my body. Here are the symptoms, and here are the specific skills I need to use to get where I want to be, which is the values aligned, regulated person, you know, that I want to be. So the window of tolerance again is providing you that picture. It is just that map that's helping you see this is where I go and this is how I navigate the various complexities that life life gives, right? So we'll keep going. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's just get to it. Here's a picture of the window of tolerance. So I'm going to read a couple boring things, but I think it's helpful to have context. So this is the picture for you to see initially that like you've never heard the window of tolerance before. This is it, and I will break it down in detail. So for starters, we're going to take a 30,000 foot view, just to kind of start us off here. In 1999, psychiatrist Dr. Dan Siegel released a book called The Developing Mind. And this is where he introduced a concept called the window of tolerance, which has since become foundational in trauma informed care within the world of psychotherapy. So I'm just going to give a brief, just quick summary, and then we'll break each one of these zones down further. So um, beginning here is the window of tolerance in the middle, right? So from left to right, that is time. So let's just say this is a picture of your day, right? That yellow line is indicating your mood and how you're doing, right? Like your nervous system, how things are going. And in this picture, this individual stayed within their window of tolerance for the entire day. So that's great. That means they didn't get dysregulated and they managed their whole day. That's awesome. So when we say things like the window of tolerance, what we mean is this is our optimal zone where a person can function, think clearly, and manage emotions. It sounds like a pretty great place to be, right? This is pretty much where we're all trying to get to and be. The problem is a lot of us have a very small window, so we don't experience those things often. Or we have loved ones who have very small windows. And actually, their small windows pull us out of our windows, right? It becomes this whole thing, which we'll talk about. But again, the ideal is staying in that window and enlarging that window, growing that window. And you can see some words there that explain it: grounded, flexible, able to self-regulate. Great stuff. When that yellow line, so your mood, when something might trigger you and you're struggling, maybe as the various situations that you guys named earlier, sometimes that pulls you out of your window. Uh, and some of us, we can go into a state of dysregulation we call hyperarousal, right? So when we're in hyperarousal, this is fight or flight activation, right? So this looks like anger, panic, um, emotional flooding, etc. Ultimately, so here's the therapy language for you. Dysregulation, right? So hyperarousal is dysregulation. Hypoarousal, it's below the window. That is also dysregulation, but it's a different flavor of dysregulation, right? So we're looking at the freeze side of the nervous system activation, right? This is maybe the freeze or collapse response. If you go to hypoarousal or you're in hypoarousal, this is looking like depressive symptoms, possibly dissociation, right? So you're very much not grounded, very much not in the present, issues like that, emotional flatness, etc. So that's kind of my little explanation of these three. Let me just read a couple of these comments here real quick. Yeah, Andrew, these are excellent questions. And I'm going to answer these in the slideshow. So that's I love that you're already thinking ahead on this because that is exactly where we're going, right? How can we get to the window of tolerance? And how do we get to a place where we notice we're getting out of the window of tolerance? That is 100% what we're after today, Andrew. So that's yeah, I just love that. Great, great question. So we're going to keep moving here. I want to give just a little more of an explanation of the window and then hyperarousal and hypoarousal. And we'll keep going, okay? So, just a slightly different definition for you to read and maybe write down if you're taking notes. This is the state of being where a person can function well, make decisions aligned with their values, and effectively manage whatever life throws at them. So, a big note here is you can be angry and in your window of tolerance. You can be sad and be in your window of tolerance. You can be anxious and be in your window of tolerance. All those emotions are normal things that we are never going to expel from our human experience, right? Those are normal things that we have to, and as hard as it is, right? Like suffering and all this deep stuff, it's going to be a part of life's experience. So really what we're doing in therapy and what we're doing in like I'm in IOP right now. I'm doing a lot of IOP groups. Really, what we're doing is just building tolerance to these things and learning to accumulate the positives while also saying, hey, there are going to be some negatives. But I want to get to a place where I can manage those things though within my window of tolerance and not have those things pull me out all the time like they do, right? So as well in the window, you can feel emotions and not be overwhelmed and all these helpful things. Let's see what else I want to say here. Yeah, again, this is a state of regulation. So you're when people say these therapy terms, that's what we're talking about, right? Regulation, I can make decisions align with my values. I'm managing myself well and not acting in a way that's I might deem inappropriate later. Another kind of maybe fancy, like neuroscience term here is like prefrontal cortex access. What that's just saying is at least in our facility, I think Promises as a whole, uh, we like to break the brain is super complicated, by the way, right? We like to break it down as like cortex at the top here, right? The cortex is where I can think rationally, and DBT language, we might say wise mind, right? So I can combine my emotions with my reasonable mind, and I can therefore make very balanced dialectical decisions in my life and choices. When you're in your window, you have access to your cortex. Below that is the limbic system. That's the emotional brain. So when we're really triggered, when we're out of our window, our limbic system is speaking the loudest, so to say, right? And it's kind of ruling the roost, so to speak. So and then below that is the brain stem, and that is where you are just in that fight or flight, kind of just immediately reacting to things, not thinking through. So ideally, you want to be in that cortex, and the window is where you have access to that part of your brain that can take into account the context and all those things. Last point I want to make here, which is pretty important, is the window is not fixed. So again, I see like some really, really good comments about this. Yeah, yeah, absolutely right, Andrea. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, Jody. So DBT stands for dialectical behavior therapy. So it's a very, very popular modality of therapy, and that's one of the primary ones we use, at least here at the ranch of PA. I know we use that quite a bit. You might have heard of CBT before. That's cognitive behavior therapy. Definitely shares some similarities, but is its own theory. So a lot of what we're talking about today is going to be, yeah, is going to be DBT based. So if you want to do your own research or look more into this, I highly recommend it. Because I should say this as well. This is just one angle to look at the window of tolerance. You can look at this from a lot of different perspectives. It's a really deep and relatively complex idea. So I'm just looking at this from one angle. This last big point here is that the window is not fixed. It can grow and shrink, which is awesome news and terrible news because as someone said earlier, like my parents' house, right? Like that's where I get right. You might have a really small window, especially with family, because stuff comes up. They know how to push your buttons. I know hopefully a lot of us love our families, but it can still just be really difficult and complicated, right? So the window is something that is growing and shrinking. And as I'll talk more about in a second, what I'm really interested in as a clinician and as someone who works with people for a full-time job is, can we get to a place where we have as big of a window as possible? Can we develop skills and things like that to help us grow our window, no matter what we've been through, right? Trauma, no matter what situations we're in, to have the biggest window at least possible, right? So that's what we're going to be exploring today. Before I get into hyper and hypoarousal specifically, I want to provide this visual because I think this is going to be really helpful in guiding the rest of our time. So in the middle here, you can see uh, the lovely window of tolerance. Um, and that, again, as I explained earlier, that squiggly line, I had to draw this, by the way, on slideshows, which I didn't know I could do, but this was awesome making this. It looks like a hair on your screen. That's the line that is like, again, our mood and kind of how we're doing throughout the day. So imagine this picture is just like a day, right? So you have hypoarousal at the bottom, hyper at the top. I'm just going to give an illustration. I'm going to tell you a story. Okay. Um, I've been really into The Sopranos this past year. It's the greatest show of all time, by the way. Just a short plug. Highly recommend watching it if you can, stomach it. It's a lot. So we're gonna call this fictitious person Tony, just because I'm shouting out my show. But let's just say Tony gets up. He gets up in the morning, gets out of bed. As you can see where the line starts, that's where Tony's beginning his day. So maybe his current life context is he's okay, right? He's getting up, maybe 7 a.m., takes the dog out, gets the kids ready for school, whatever, and he's feeling okay overall, right? So he's kind of right in the middle of that window of tolerance, that place of management. He's doing okay. He can handle what's getting thrown at him. As the day progresses, you can see there's a slight dip. Nothing to be alarmed at. That's normal. Maybe he's just not looking forward to work, and during his drive in, he's just a little like annoyed, and there's a lot of traffic, but he's managing it, right? He's not having to freak out. It's all good. Just feeling a little, eh. As the day goes on, Tony gets to work, uh, man, he's just getting a bunch of emails, and I don't know, maybe his boss is on him, or his coworkers are says something, and he's just feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. Um, so you can see he gets right up to the edge of his window at hyperarousal, but lunch is coming up. He gets maybe he gets a zero sugar root beer, or he takes a walk, or he remembers those skills they talked about in therapy like 3 years ago. He's like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna breathe. I'm gonna like call my spouse, whatever, right? So he stays within his window. He manages it. He doesn't enter a state of dysregulation. And actually, those skills and that lunch break helped him manage the rest of the day. And he did not leave his window of tolerance. He managed it. He gets home, he's feeling better. Actually, he's a little more regulated, gets even further into the window. But then there's that fight with the family. Maybe it's his spouse says something, brings up the past. Um, Maybe it's just something with his kids in their school, or they get a text from an old friend, or whatever it might be, right? Maybe a parent says something and calls them, and whatever it might be, something triggers Tony, and he leaves his window of tolerance. So as you can see here, boom, the line shoots up straight. That's where the mood enters the state of hyperarousal and dysregulation. And then Tony starts saying things he's going to regret later that night or in the morning, right? Or maybe he doesn't say things, but he feels this just like rage and like slams his fist on the counter, like bruises his hand or something, right? Whatever it might be, whatever hyperarousal might look like for him, which we'll talk about, it can look like a lot of different things. But high anxiety, right? Like he's just pacing and fuming, and his like night is ruined, right? Like just like totally off. Maybe like just maybe he's a little irritable to the kids, whatever it is. He's in that state of hyperarousal, right? So this is a good example, and this is what I'll often draw with clients is like, hey, where were you today, right? Like when this happened, where did you go, and what happened? Yeah, thanks, Derek. hopefully you guys can hear me all right. I'm like waving my hands around, so maybe I gotta stay closer. So hopefully, but let me know if it feels choppy or anything, and I can mess around with it. Right? So, um, like I was saying, this is something I draw with clients. This is helpful for people as well, just to visualize, like, okay, this is where things are going, and in this situation for Tony, it was that interaction maybe with his spouse or kids or family members or a bill or the toilet wasn't working, whatever it was, that got him dysregulated. Okay. The next slide I want to show here is if there was like a multiverse and there was another Tony, and it was the exact same day, but he had a bigger window. So let's take a look at that. So this was the Tony we were just talking about. This is Tony in this like, other dimension, right? Exact same day, let's say, right? Exact same day, you know, tick for tack, same exact thing happened. The difference is the window is large here. So he still went through that situation that ticked him off, right? That was difficult for him, but he stayed within his window of tolerance and handled it better, you know? And like still acted in alignment with his values and didn't say anything maybe as hurtful and was able to like regulate himself very quickly and realize, okay, I'm getting close. This is what I'm gonna do to help me stay here in the window. Um, so again, look at the difference here, right? It's just the building of the window is what we're after. So really, like the question I'm asking is this, right? What if it were possible, to the best of your ability, to have a protocol, practices, or intentional acts that help you build and strengthen your window? So that's really like the question I think about a lot as a therapist, as a person who has family and has, responsibility. Like, man, I'm going to be the best version of myself if I can have the largest window possible. And I want to figure out how to do that. So that's what we're going to be talking about some more today as I keep going. Um, Before we get into that, building the window, we first have to talk about hyper arousal and hypoarousal, because you cannot build the window from the outside in, but it has to be built from the inside out. So the first step for all of us, and hopefully this answers some of the questions in the chat, is like, in order to build your window, you have to get better at getting back into your window first, right? So for a lot of clients, they'll see, I'm living in hyperarousal or I'm living in hypoarousal a lot of the times, or I'm just dysregulated a lot. So we have to build some skills that re-regulate you, right? So that's where we're going here. So the first place we're going to start is just going over these states again. Hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is um, status regulation. It's above the window. It's associated with fight or flight, and primarily like maybe the emotion of anger. And you can see in this picture a lot of some of the other symptoms. But they're like anger, right? Racing heart rate. So that's another thing to zero in on is like a racing heart rate can not always, obviously, like you're exercising, you get a high, a racing heart rate. But like, what if I have like a racing heart rate when I'm sitting down and like my skin feels warm, like my face is getting red, right? That's a physical sign I need to tune into that I might be entering into hyper arousal. It can also look like muscle tension, impulsivity, um, intrusive thoughts. All sorts of these different symptoms can take us over, and then we become, lesser versions of ourselves, which we want to avoid, and we're trying to grow through. So that's hyperarousal. Hypoarousal, uh, as stated earlier, right, is associated with that freeze response. So when you enter into hypoarousal, you often feel maybe disconnected from your body and mind, right? So here's some things this could look like. It might look like emotional numbness. So like I'm not really experiencing emotions. I'm just like flat, right? Like I'm just maybe feeling flat, not like myself. Um, yeah, thanks, Derek. Exactly right. Physical symptoms are huge, right? And being able to distinguish for yourself what that looks like in your body. Um, in hypoarousal, um, like lethargy, right? So that could also be a huge part of um, hypoarousal. Like I'm just feeling like slow. I got 8 hours, you know, my Apple Watch is telling me I got this, but like I just don't feel like I have the energy. There might be some hypoarousal going on here, right? Maybe it's depression, maybe it's clinical depression, but it also could be, I could also be in a state of hypoarousal, not doing well. Low motivation, depersonalization. These are really scary things if you've ever experienced it before, right? This is not a pleasant state to be in. This is really, really difficult. Feeling dissociated, feeling that brain fog, right? So hyperarousal are some of these different symptoms, and hopefully you can see why we're getting, or how rather, hypo is different than hyper, right? Hopefully you're seeing how that looks different. So the question here is then why? Why even distinguish between hyper and hypo, right? Why not just call it dysregulation? And this is another reason I love the window, is because different states require different skills to regulate, right? So the skills that I need when I'm in hyperarousal are going to look different than the skills I might use in hypoarousal. So if I can distinguish where I'm at, right? Which dysregulated state I'm at, or which dysregulated state my loved one is in, then I can use more effective skills, right? Yeah, John, that's a really helpful insight, right? So sometimes I feel like I have them both at the same time. I think that that's possible. I think I have to do more thinking about like how to navigate that. So, um, I don't know if you like have an individual clinician or just somebody to talk to about that because I think it's in those times you really need an individualized approach. So maybe as I go through the different skills, John, be considering like, okay, this one works for me when I'm like this. Actually, and it's more skills like this when I'm over here. So it just depends. We're trying to categorize things, but sometimes it is a little bit of both. Can you decrease your window of tolerance so much that you stay stuck in hyperarousal as your baseline? Can you bounce between hyper and hypo throughout the day? Yeah, those are good questions. So the second question is definitely, I think you can go up and down. So Jennifer, I'd also think of it too, like at least this is how I conceptualize it. Again, another clinician might explain it differently. This is how I conceptualize it. Like if your window is really, really small, um, you're much more likely you know, to go like high in the day, like I get frustrated and then I'm just like feel bad about it. So I'm low again. Like if the window's small, you're much more likely to dip into those different states of dysregulation. And then staying stuck in hyperarousal as your baseline. I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know that we would stay stuck there. I just think we would, yeah, maybe it's more of an analogy, to be honest, and a metaphor. I don't know if there's like actual research that's like, no, you are literally in fight or flight all the time. I'd have to look more into that, like from a trauma lens. But I definitely think um, you can experience hyperarousal a lot. And the language I've used with clients is, I'm just in hyperarousal all the time. So I need to use these specific distress tolerance skills often. And then we need to figure out what's pushing you up there. Do you have a lot of like repressed anger or like hurt or sadness that needs to be processed, right? So that's what in like individual therapy, like that's kind of how we would work through it. Yeah, these are really thoughtful questions. Thank you. These are really, really good questions. I'm gonna keep going. So when we think of being in hyper or hypoarousal as states of dysregulation, and I know Callie mentioned this earlier, we want to use distress tolerance skills specifically. All right. So distress tolerance skills are just a category of coping skills. So you hear that a lot. Use your coping skills, use your coping skills. To be more specific, when you're in hyper or hypo, we're going to want to use what we call distress tolerance skills. The definition of distress tolerance skills are skills used to survive a crisis without making it worse. All right. So the goal isn't to completely get back in your window and be completely managed. The goal in distress tolerance is I don't want to make it worse. And then my body will get itself back in its window and then we'll go from there. But I just want to use, and they're typically, the language we use is they're bottom up. So they're typically body oriented to help us in accessing the cortex. Because the problem is in our Western culture, in our Western world, we sometimes think we're brains on a stick that we can just think our way through things, or we can rationalize our way through things like, oh, that thought, that's just not true. I have to challenge that. When you're actually dysregulated, you're not able to think clearly, right? You're not able to challenge your thoughts when you're really, really dysregulated, and when your body is maybe like reliving a trauma, or like you're really, really struggling. Um, so and I love that comment, Derek. Yeah, Wim Hof is crazy, man. But like some of those breathing methods, like right, super practical, and that definitely fits the distress tolerance category. So excellent. Excellent. Let me see if there's anything else to comment on here. Okay. Because yeah, again, the thinking rational part of our brain is often offline when dysregulated. So we often just need to use the body to help us um, calm down and come back to a state of like my cortex is here and I'm okay. Right. So we'll keep going. So let's look at what specific distress tolerance skills we want to use for hyperarousal. So these are going to be calming skills. Um, Here's some examples, right? Paced breathing. Tip. Tip would be temperature intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation. Okay. So you can look this stuff up if you don't know them. But a lot of clients here grabbing an ice pack, going outside, stretching, taking a brisk walk. Like these are things that can help us calm down, right? And just relax, maybe slower heart rate, grounding skills, right? Like I just need to calm down. Yeah, sure, Derek. Cold plunge is great, right? Stop. So stop stands for stop, which I always thought is funny. The S stands for stop and stop, but whatever. T is take a step back. O, observe. P, proceed mindfully, right? So just a skill like that helps, um, you know, lengthen the time between the stimulus and response, right? So I'm not just anger moment going off, anxious thoughts taking me over. I'm actually taking a step back and I'm calming my body down. Maybe I'm gently stretching, listening to some relaxing music that helps me. So these are a number of the different skills that help calm. Right? So if you think hyper is like I'm very activated and frustrated, so therefore I need skills that calm me down because I'm too far up, right? That's one way to think of it. Let me think if there's anything else that I put on there. Yeah, really, the core of distress tolerance is distraction. I need to find a way to healthily distract me from this stimulus that is triggering me and frustrating me, whether it be a thought, person, emotion, experience, context, something like that, right? Now, how about for hypoarousal? We're looking for skills that activate, right? Because if I'm dissociated, if I'm out of it, if I'm feeling really, really down, um, something I forgot to mention too is like people pleasing. Like I just don't have access to like, I just don't want to start a conflict or a fight. So I'm just, I'm a doormat here. I'm really, really struggling. That's another way that hypoarousal shows up for people. I want skills that help me activate and get me back up into my window. So again, things like movement, especially brisk walking, even jumping. I've actually used jumping jacks myself, and that is very, very helpful, just initially. Cold or warm sensory. It could be cold, but again, it could also be a warm thing. I know Derek, you said shocking the system. Absolutely. Finding something that works for you. Another thing here, if I'm dissociated, if I'm really struggling that way, orienting to my surroundings, naming them. I had one clinician that he would tell me that clients who were really dysregulated, grab an expo marker, right? And just hey, tell me to describe that to me, right? Tell me about what you see, with this expo marker. And often that just helps people ground and they feel better and they often get pretty close to, if not fully return to their window, right? Another practical thing at home is just do one simple task, one hobby. That's another thing that's helped clients. They just feel overwhelmed, so they resort to Netflix or YouTube or TikTok or whatever it might be, and just avoid and escape, which is understandable, but that often like makes things worse over time. So one simple task, one hobby can go a long way in helping you get those activation skills. Activation in a good way, right? Okay. So that I think that kind of wraps up the distress tolerance piece I wanted to hit on. Distress tolerance, skills to survive the moment. The problem that clients run into, I've seen in people, like just us as people, is we can get better at the distress tolerance skills, but our window then isn't growing, right? Because we're just getting back into our window. But if we're not doing the emotion regulation skills, which we're about to talk about, we're really not growing our window. So distress tolerance and emotion regulation skills have to be combined for them to be most effective, right? So the way we're going to define emotion regulation here is skills uh, used when regulated to build and maintain themselves as people, right? In other words, to build my window of tolerance. Skills I use when I'm regulated, intentional skills that maybe are a little bit harder, um, a little more thought out, that help me grow my window and help me maintain myself. So I split them up into two categories. The first category is daily practice emotion regulation. This is going to be a huge thing for clients is and loved ones and yourself is like, okay, I have to be intentional with when I'm in my window, not all the time, but at certain points throughout my day that I'm using some of these skills that help me build this up and help me build a tolerance and resilience to, as we said earlier, the challenges of life, right? So the first one, this is the unsexy one that I just want to talk about first because it's unsexy, it's not cool, but it's the truth. It's foundational. Sleep, nutrition, and exercise. For me, the framing of it as not only it's not only emotion regulation, but it really can be. It really serves that purpose of regulating emotions, growing the window of tolerance, maintain the window of tolerance, locking in on your sleep routine, making maybe some little changes with nutrition, perhaps switching from sugar soda to zero sugar soda, just to name one, right? Exercise, whatever that might look like for you, maybe getting an extra walk in at work, maybe really figuring out what a gym routine looks like for you, or a stretching routine at home, or we have a yoga instructor come in here, do chair yoga. Like that's sick. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? So all these different options we would encourage you and your loved ones to think about. The next one here for daily practices is some sort of mindfulness and meditation. I won't talk too much about mindfulness here, meditation, but um, I think it can look like a lot of different things in your life. But I would say, what helps you grow in awareness? What helps you slow down? And just be a little more thoughtful and present and engaged. So that can look like a lot of different things, as simple as getting up and instead of checking your phone, sit in your chair in your room or downstairs and just like watching the sun come up for like 5 minutes. That could be it. Next one's a huge one here is journaling. There's a ton of research on expressive writing. Um, Also, just like diary keeping, it could be as simple as like, this is what I did today. But making it a practice is massive in building your window because journaling helps stop emotions from getting suppressed and it helps stop emotions from being ignored and avoided with phone use and with tech use and all these different things. So, journaling is a massive one. I probably encourage every single client to the point that it annoys them to just engage a little bit with journaling. Prayer and spiritual engagement can also be a huge emotion regulation skill. Obviously, the purpose of spirituality isn't just to emotionally regulate yourself, but that's an added benefit to it as well if that's something you value and find important. So having some rhythm of spiritual practices or spiritual engagements are massive for individuals in growing that window of tolerance. Last two ones briefly, reading and art as well, using reading intentionally. Um, maybe you read too many self-help books and like actually you find great relief in like beautiful stories. Like, I don't know, for me, like reading Stephen King just goes really hard and it's really helpful. It's awesome, right? Just like it's great. Like it's an enjoyable thing that actually could act as emotion regulation compared to, maybe some of the other things we do with our spare time. So just thinking intentionally about some of those things as well. And lastly, art, just anything that is expressive and creative and a way for you to express yourself goes a long way in emotion regulation. The next category I'd put, and I know I'm wrapping up here, it's almost seven, is some of the deeper processing skills. This looks like therapy, right? I mean, obviously I'm a therapist, right? So I'm going to say that. But really, therapy acts as a huge emotion regulation thing in terms of building your window of tolerance because you're getting to the bottom of things. The distress tolerance is just like I'm getting through it and I'm more attuned to my body. But the way I look at it is going to therapy or maybe engaging in like journaling or something like that or talking with a close friend helps you actually dig into like yeah, like I feel hurt by my parents and like I need to like talk about that or like this thing that happened at work like really wounded me or this thing that happened in childhood it was painful and like I need to like talk more about it and figure out a way to like reframe it differently in my mind. So therapy can obviously help with that and other skills. Cognitive restructuring, right? Just kind of a fancy way of saying like changing your thoughts, right? Really starting to look through of what cognitive distortions am I giving into? Am I catastrophizing all the time? Am I doing such and such, right? But looking at starting to change and alter some of those thinking patterns that you might have had since you were a young person. Last two here are grief work and working through hurts and wounds. So a lot of that happens in therapy, but it can also happen um, on long walks in your neighborhood or in the woods. Like really, this can happen in many ways when you just lead with some intentionality. And again, with these emotion regulation skills, go slow, right? Go slow, give grace to yourself. It's going to take time to build the window of tolerance, right? And that's an okay thing. Um, oh yeah, Margaret, come on. Absolutely. Yep. Crafts and journaling, meditation, come on. Yep. Yep. Great. Yeah, these are really, really good. I would absolutely throw gratitude in as an emotion regulation skill. Be intentional about gratitude, how that's practiced in your life. Massive. And thanks for mentioning that. Okay. So I'm about to end here. Wow, sorry for this really creepy picture. It looked cooler when I selected it, but it that is a really weird picture. But it's supposed to be of a family. I thought it was creative. But I want to briefly talk about the window of tolerance from a family lens, right? So getting to a place where you not only understand your window, and that's where you have to start, right? But grown awareness of your loved one's window, of your boss's window, of your parents' window of tolerance. I really believe this. This is a cheat code. This is why I love the window of tolerance. It's like, man, I'm able to like not personalize stuff as much or be more effective in how I interact with people because I they have windows too. You know, like they're going through stuff and I just have to share this real quick. Shout out to my brother. Me and him used to play Lego Star Wars when we were younger, and this is a video game on like the PlayStation 2. And we would go online and we would look up cheat codes, and you put XX, circle, triangle, and it would unlock like the whole game and like every character, and you'd get like 5 million gold points. It was just awesome. And that's how I feel about the window of tolerance with family is like it is a cheat code, not just with family, but also with people in your life, is to be able to sit through and think of, right? Okay, this person's in hyper arousal right now. My wife is in hypoarousal right now. What do I need to do here to help co-regulate, to help manage, right? And put, yeah, John, right. Put others in a position to succeed. Exactly right. So, for example, if my loved one is in hyperarousal, one example or one recommendation might be match their energy. Don't, someone's hyper, you don't just want to kind of sit like, yeah, no, I hear you. You want, okay, yeah, I got you. I get you're feeling this way, but here's what I'm hearing. Like, can we take a walk right now? Can we just, step out for a second? I know we talked about like the deep breathing thing. Can we do that? Or whatever, whichever way sounds natural. Um, Hyperarousal. But if your loved one goes into hypoarousal, you help them gently activate, right? Soft tone, invite them into an activity instead of pressuring them. So this has been a helpful insight for couples I've worked with because what they've a lot of times is one member of the relationship goes into hyper and the other person goes into hypo often. So you can imagine what happens when you put two people together in opposite states of dysregulation, right? The person in hyper is like rah rah rah, and the person in hypo is like I'm out and I'm like not into it. I'm not making eye contact. So then the person in hyperarousal gets more angry and more frustrated, and they go deeper into hyper. And then the person in hypo like feels more hurt and more isolated and more anxious and upset, so they go deeper into hypo, and then it just creates this cycle, right? So really sitting with how do I give this person that I care about, if it's especially if it's family, like how do I give to the best of my ability, regulate myself, and then in any way that I can give them what they need, whether that's a break, whether that's a co-regulation skill, or whether it's just having empathy and like being calm goes a long way. So that's the kind of the last thing I wanted to mention is just like the window of tolerance from that family lens. So in conclusion, it's 7:01. I want to respect our time. Is just a couple final points that summarize. When you're already out of your window, regulate first. That's the stress tolerance. When you're in your window, over time and at certain times in your day, build the window. Practice some of those emotion regulation skills. Get better at that pattern of notice, return, build, right? That's really where we're at. So, and give yourself grace and give others grace in doing this, right? This work takes time, do it slow. So, yeah, I appreciate everybody's time here. Um, yeah, a couple good questions. Yeah, is there a list of co-regulation ideas? Yeah, you could. There's a ton like online. I'd recommend. I could talk to some of that, but I think online there's again a lot of really, really good ones. Walking, like throwing a ball back and forth, talking with your partner about what works. Those are just a couple, but yeah, yeah. Thanks.
And we could also, maybe add some of those into like the resources. So at the end here, I'll be adding Jake's slides, so you all can have these to keep, and we can kind of add in some more ideas there. I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah,
Awesome. Any other questions for Jake before we close off here? That was great. I know, personally, my biggest question to you is which like Stephen King book is your favorite? I don't know how
yeah.
important that is to everyone
That's a
else,
it's
but
a massive question. 11/22/63. So.
that's a good one.
Guys, go out and read it. That's it's like 800 pages though, so it's a lot, but
These
it,
books are
it goes
long.
by fast. Time travel, romance, you can't go wrong with that. A little bit of horror. So thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, I think this was super helpful, whether you're kind of trying to meet someone where they're at within recovery or just within your own relationships. I think that was very accessible. And y'all, thank you for being here. Again, we have our support group next Tuesday. So if you have any questions that are lingering or you want to come back and ask, we'll be here again next Tuesday evening. That link is in the chat, and I'll be sure to send you all a follow-up email with our future webinars. Again, this is always free. We're here every month. Jake, I'm definitely going to have you back. This was excellent.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you all
anytime.
so
Appreciate it.
much. Have a great rest of your evening. Thanks, y'all.